So this is a topical video, for a lot of reasons. So, Arc 9, A Changing Skies, recently announced that we would be getting a fourth POV for the arc. Not only that, we learned, kind of through inference, that Starling Paw, the fourth POV for this arc, would be a rotating POV, theoretically, or simply a replacement POV for Leaf Star. Which, has not been done since Arc 2. Coupled with the fact that graphic novel adaptation Arcs 2 and 3 were recently announced, which introduced and kind of infamously did multiple POVs, as well as the fact that Super Edition 18, StormClan's Folly, is going to have 2 POVs as well. Yeah, I think I waited long enough. I'm going to do this video now. So, multiple protagonists. Is kind of an infamous thing in Warrior Cats. There's been some good ones, some bad ones, and some horrendous ones. So, we're going to talk about them. So first off, the kind of idea. Multiple protagonists. What is it? What's the benefits? What's the detriments? Well, it's kind of a lot. So multiple protagonists. Theoretically, having multiple protagonists in a story is multifaceted. The core principle, I believe, I'm speaking from experience here, from my own writings, the idea is that basically it broadens the world. Different people have different perspectives on different things. It allows for different people to look at a singular situation and each see it differently. And that can give the reader a more visceral and deeper understanding of the story and the world at large. And, in theory, there are many stories that have done this well. Specifically, either in one book or in multiple books. The example that comes to mind, I would say, is Wings of Fire. While I sometimes have issues with how they pick and choose what character is the POV of which book, I do think it is interesting. Not just because the characters have different perspectives on situations, but also because different characters see their fellow characters, their fellow POVs, in different ways. And I think that's interesting. There, of course, are bad examples of this. None come to particular mind. But there are definitely instances where having multiple POVs can be a detriment, specifically if they're functionally the same character. If you have, let's say, 2 POVs, and if they think the same, if they act the same, if they have the same worldview, and the only difference is their names, that does not benefit the story. If anything, it worsens the story because it narrows the reader's point of view. It narrows the perspective they might have gained from this world. And that's an issue. Of course, Warrior Cats has many of these issues, but also has done many of the benefits. So, starting in Arc 2, we had multiple protagonists, which, in theory, and even on paper, it was a good idea. In Arc 1, we only had Firestar, which is fine. You can have one POV for the first arc. He's a new character. It was definitely written as a very good way. When he learns something in the story, we learn something, which, works for that story. But with Arc 2, the world established, the story is more or less established, we need something different. So we have one warrior perspective, and then we have one medicine cat perspective, which definitely, broadens the world, because we have learned a lot about medicine cats, and to some extent, Firestar has kind of acted as a medicine cat POV, specifically on the spiritual side of things. He gets dreams and visions and prophecies, and that has kind of been filled by the medicine cat POV. And Leafpool, more or less, does a good job at that, because she gives us a more kind of calm and passive and deep understanding and empathetic viewpoint of the world. Whereas the warrior POVs, Brambleclaw, Squirrelflight, not really Stormfur and Feathertail, but I'll throw them in here as well, they give us a more forward thinking, practical mindset. If there's a problem, I'm going to solve it with more or less brute force. I say more or less, there's some complicated stuff in here, but that's the generic answer. And then we get to Arc 3, which is when the problems started occurring. So Arc 3 had 3 POVs. Jayfeather, Hollyleaf, and Lionblaze. And this is when the problems really started to arise. Because the issue with 3 POVs, with Warrior Cat specifically, is that it was spread kind of thin between them. I mean, Jay Feather clearly is the one that got the most development. He did not have anything taken away from them. I think the authors learned very early on that Jay Feather, for one reason or another, good or bad, was by far the most interesting character of that arc. And so a lot of screen time was given to developing him and making it so that he moves the plot forward. But that did come at the cost of both Lion Blaze and, more importantly, Hollyleaf. Now, Lion Blaze, to be fair, they did give him some things in Arc 3 and 4. In Arc 3, he had that whole love interest plot line, he had the whole training of the Dark Forest, stuff like that. Hollyleaf didn't really have anything. She was significant in Book 1 and then significant in Book 6, and then in between, didn't really get much to do beyond, generic apprentice and warrior stuff. I really think that Hollyleaf was failed by the narrative, in so much that, from her perspective, she was kind of pointless a lot of the time, which is frustrating, because she could have had substance to the plot. But in most cases, she was only used as a plot device to move the plot forward. She was used as a plot device to basically clear the way for Jay Feather to eventually become Medicine Cats, and then in Book 6, not only did she kill Ashfur, but also opened up the doors for the rest of the clans to know the great secret, her heritage, all the scandals and whatnot. Which, that's not great. And of course we get to Arc 4. Again, Jay Feather, he's given a lot to do. A lot to move the plot along, a lot of random stuff, good and bad. Lion Blaze, the only interesting thing he really gets in this arc is his love life, which is complicated, to say the least. And then him being mentored to Dovewing, who similarly does not get as much beyond just, her love life, which, okay. She has, by far the most interesting power, and it is used in creative ways, but as far as, what her perspective offers to the plot, the only thing it really offers is, unbridled optimism. Unlike her sister, Ivypool, who offers a lot. She's a bit more antagonistic, a bit more villainous. And yeah, she does have a genuinely good character arc as far as, kind of a fallen hero a hero turned villain turned hero. Not really, she wasn't really a villain, a fallen hero kind of arc. Genuinely very interesting. But while Jay Feathers was really good, and Ivypool's was pretty good, it came at the cost of making both Lion Blaze and Dovewing less interesting at times. 4 POVs was just way too many, which is why this is the only arc that ever did it. At least, 4 solid POVs. We'll talk about Arc 9 in a sec. And then we get to Arc 5. It's rough. So, Greywing is probably that's difficult. I would say Greywing's probably the standout POV. He's given a lot of stuff to do. That's probably because he dies at the end. But even then, there are certain points where his character is sacrificed in order to betterment of the other characters, which isn't great. I seriously think Thunder was seriously undeveloped. I don't like Thunder. Let me be perfectly clear. I don't like Thunder as a character. But I can't help but wonder if that's because his time to shine as a POV was sacrificed to further Clear Sky and Greywing's storyline, which I have to say was more interesting. But I can't help but wonder if that interest was developed at the sacrifice of something else. Then we get to Arc 6. I am the resident Arc 6 hater. I do not like A Vision of Shadows. So let's keep this brief. Alderheart should not have been kept around as a POV. It's very clear to me that Alderheart's point, as a point of view character, was his only purpose was to bring forth Twigbranch and Violadon. That's his only purpose. After, Book 3, and hell, I even say after Book 2, he should not have been of the POV. He's only used as a plot device to bring them into the narrative, because afterwards, he's not used at all. Yeah, he does random Medicine Cat stuff, but he's not really that important. His Medicine Cat ceremony, typically a thing of great importance and great significance for our previous characters, is a footnote. It's the most dull and boring thing. He doesn't even do that creative accomplishment in order to kind of warrant it. Unlike Medicine Cats before and after him, it just happens with little to no fanfare. And I can't help but feel that, that wouldn't be the case if either they cut him from the narrative, which they should have, or they would have devoted more time to him. Because it felt like them keeping him into the narrative as a point of view character was an obligation, if anything. Just, it was very clear that they wanted Twig Branch and Violet Dawn to become, the center focus of this arc. Which, granted, they're not great either. But I feel like what could have been used to expand them. Expand their relationships as sisters. Expand their relationship as, an individual. Their love life, which is... their love life's weird. But I felt like certain aspects of their story were held back by the fact that Alderheart was still a point-of-view character. And of course, I can't really comment on arcs 7 and 8. While I have read the first book of The Broken Code, I don't know if the first book's really indicative of anything. Beyond, it's fine. It's very clear to me that Bristlefrost and, Shadowsight are, the main POVs that they want to focus on. And then, Brute Spring is, similarly, it's kind of set up that he will be a plot device, because he can see Bramblestar's ghost. Again, cannot comment on how the later arc plays out. I've heard mixed things. I've seen mixed things. I've read, summarizations and whatnot. But what I can talk about is Arc 9, Changing Skies. Yeah. So, this book, again, brings back 3 POVs. At least the first book. Moonpaw and Tawny Pelt are fine. I think this arc, which is interesting, this arc definitely wants to focus on Tawny Pelt. And Moonpaw definitely has her own things going on. But then Leafstar is confusing. It's even more confusing about that she's going to be kicked out of the narrative in Book 2. And yes, she could be a rotating POV, with her getting the odd number books and Starling Paw getting the even numbered books. But if she's kept in as a protagonist, what will be the point? Genuinely, I don't know. And if she is kicked out of the narrative, if from here on it's only Starling Paw, it means they would have wasted her as a character. Which still leads in the problem that Warrior Cats has an issue with balancing its multiple POVs. Warrior Cats has always had this issue with balancing its multiple POVs. They have never really struck a good balance, as far as consistently. There's always been books and even arcs where one character is significantly more focused on. Or in case of Dawn of A Vision of Shadows, where no character is really the standout. And I think that's an issue with Warrior Cats. It hasn't really found the right balance as far as I'm concerned when it comes to multiple protagonists. And that's not to say they can't do it. I fully believe multiple protagonists should be something they do. But it's been clear to me for many years that 3 POVs is not working. 3 POVs, 4 POVs, and that one random time where they did 5 POVs, because yeah, that's a thing, it's not really ever worked. Or at least worked enough where people can say, yes, this is cool. It's always been a struggle. Either one character is the standout, 2 characters stand out in the rare case that it is, or no character is the standout. And that's an issue. Which is why I think, and this is a hot take, it might be, I don't know, Warrior Cats should do 2 POVs. I know with Arc 9, they're not going to do that. But maybe with Arc 10, they could do that. They could do 2 POVs. And if anything, there might be a test coming up soon as to how 2 POVs could work. StormClan's Folly will have 2 POVs, Stripestar and Galestar. Which is interesting because they are from different clans. They are romantic, as well as the fact that, they're based on what we know from Ivy Pool's Heart, they have kind of a tense relationship, which could be narratively interesting. Of course, we'll have to wait and see if that book does 2 POVs well, because the last time a Super Edition did 2 POVs in SkyClan's Destiny, it was terrible. Stick's only purpose in the story was to move the story along in points where physically Leafstar couldn't, which was stupid because it felt really contrived. Like, Stick, he did not need to be in that story. The thing is, I don't even remember if he was, like, hinted as a romantic, like option. Because, like, if he was a romantic option, that would have, it kind of explained why he's in the narrative. But if he wasn't, it's even more pointless. However, this Super Edition definitely feels like it could, do 2 POVs well in a Super Edition. And if anything, it could prove that 2 POVs is something that can be done well, and maybe could be applied in the future to the main series. Because as far as the main series goes, we've only ever had it once with Arc 2. It's either been 1 POV, 3 POVs, or 4 POVs. That's it. We've only ever had one instance of 2 POVs. At least per book. Yeah, we had other characters, like, rotating. But, like, as far as, like, per book, only ever had 2 POVs. One time. But again, it could fail. And if it fails, they could just stick with 3 POVs, because that seems to be working for them fine. But I don't know. And to be fair, we're only 1 book into Changing Skies, so that arc could, quote-unquote, fix 3 POVs for me, but I don't know. I think there's time for a change. I really believe Arc 10 should at least explore the idea of changing how they do multiple POVs. I don't think 3 has ever really worked. I don't think there's a single arc that has perfectly balanced 3 POVs. Again, haven't read Arc 7 and 8, but if the first book of Arc 7 is anything to go on, I don't think they've got it yet. And even if Arc 8 did solve the issue, Arc 9 went right back to what the initial issues, which is not finding that perfect balance. Because at least as of this current time recording, this arc has not justified why Leaf Star was a POV beyond just, like, creating, like, plot tension. So, yeah. What do you guys think? Do you like 1 POVs, 2 POVs, or 3 or 4 or 5? Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you all so much for watching, and have a nice day.